At 37 years old, Sergeant Trent Williams earned $55,000 a year from the United States Army, a salary that felt both substantial and utterly insufficient. For 9 months, that salary had accumulated in a joint account while he was deployed, a small fact that gave him a sense of security. He was a logistics man, a specialist in the art of moving things and people, from where they were to where they needed to be. He believed in order, in plans, in the steady, reliable sequence of cause and effect. This belief was the bedrock of his life. But as the transport plane descended toward Fort Liberty, he had no idea that the entire foundation of his world had been liquefied and sold for cash. He thought he was coming home to his wife, Tamika, and to the quiet, predictable life they had built in Fayetteville. He thought about his mother, Lillian, safe in the small Massey Hill bungalow he had helped her buy outright after his father passed. The house was her world, her garden was her pride, and her safety was his non-negotiable duty. He had left a power of attorney with Tamika, a standard military precaution, granting her limited power to manage his affairs and, more importantly, to assist his mother if any need arose. The document was for necessary care, a phrase he'd read a dozen times, a shield for his mother in his absence. He was a simple man with simple needs, his service, his family, and the honor that bound them. In 3 hours, he would learn that he had none of them. The life Trent had left behind 9 months ago was a carefully constructed facade of domestic normalcy, each detail tagged with a price he could barely afford and a cost he couldn't yet see. Their rented townhome in a newer development off Cliffdale Road was a constant battle between his frugality and Tamika's aspirations. Her taste was showcased in the living room, dominated by a plush, cream-colored sectional sofa she'd bought on credit from Rooms to Go for $3,200. "It elevates the space, Trent," she had said, running a hand over the fabric. He'd looked at their old, perfectly functional $600 sofa sitting on the curb and just nodded. On the wall hung a massive 70-inch Samsung television, a $1,700 Black Friday deal she claimed was an investment in our downtime. His contribution to the decor was a small framed photo of his parents on their wedding day, a relic from a different time that cost him nothing but love. Their financial conversations were a recurring, low-grade tension. "Babe, Lachey just got this new Michael Kors tote, the Jet Set one. It's only $450, she'd say, scrolling through her phone while he was balancing their checkbook on his modest $800 Dell laptop. He'd look at the numbers, at his $55,000 salary broken down into columns for rent, utilities, and his allotment to his mother's account. "We can't, Tamika," he'd say gently. "Not this month." The disappointment on her face was a familiar pang of guilt for him. He felt he was failing her, that his steady Army pay wasn't enough to give her the sparkling life she saw on social media, the one her sister Lachey seemed to effortlessly inhabit. Lachey, always dressed in brands he only recognized from magazine ads, drove a white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 car she financed with a job whose title seemed to change every 6 months. One evening, about a month before his deployment, Trent was in the kitchen meticulously preparing his mother's favorite meal, a slow-cooked pot roast, to take over to her house. The ingredients cost him $34.78 at Food Lion. Tamika walked in, her phone pressed to her ear. She was wearing a new silk blouse, one he hadn't seen before. "No, girl, he doesn't get it," she was saying to Lachey, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "It's about a lifestyle. It's about showing people you've arrived." She saw Trent and her tone shifted. "I have to go. Talk later." She hung up and smiled at him, a bright, dazzling smile that always disarmed him. "What you doing, baby?" she asked, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Smells good." "Making a roast for Mama," he said, his focus on the carrots he was chopping. "Want to ride over with me?" She pulled back slightly. Oh, honey, I can't. Lachey and I were going to check out that new wine bar downtown. You know, the one with the $20 glasses of Chardonnay. She kissed his cheek. You have fun, though. Tell Mama I love her. He watched her walk away to get ready, the scent of her $120 Chanel perfume replacing the savory aroma of the roast. He knew the blouse was probably another $150 he hadn't budgeted for. He finished his cooking in silence. The conversation about the power of attorney was the pinnacle of this manufactured normalcy. It happened at their small dining table, the same one where he paid bills, and she scrolled through online boutiques. He had the papers from the JAG office, crisp and official. So this is it, he said, laying them out. It's a limited POA. It just lets you pay bills from our account and, most importantly, help Mama if something happens. Like if she needs a repair on the house or has a medical thing. It's only for necessary care and maintenance. He tapped the specific clause. Tamika had leaned in, all supportive concern. She placed her hand over his, her nails a perfect, glossy red that cost $75 a month to maintain. Of course, baby. Don't you worry about a thing. I'll take care of your mother, like she's my own. You just focus on staying safe and coming home. She scanned the document, her eyes lingering on the legal language. He saw what he wanted to see, a loving wife promising to protect his family. He missed the glint in her eye, the subtle, acquisitive flicker as she processed the power he was handing her. He had no idea he was giving the fox the keys to the henhouse. He just saw his beautiful wife, a black woman with luminous, deep brown skin and a smile that could melt his sergeant's resolve, promising to be his anchor. He signed the document, had it notarized for $5 at the base library, and handed her his entire world, wrapped in legal paper. He believed he was protecting his mother. In reality, he was arming her predator. During the deployment, the signs were there, small cracks in the facade that he explained away with distance and bad connections. The phone calls became shorter, her excuses more elaborate. Babe, I'm so sorry. I'm in the middle of something with Lachey, she'd say, the background noise sounding like the clinking of glasses and loud music from a restaurant, not the quiet of their townhome. He'd be calling from a makeshift tent in a dusty foreign country at 3 a.m. his time, having waited all day for the chance. The call would cost him $2.75 a minute on his satellite phone card. He always asked about his mother. How's Mama Lillian doing? Did you check on her? Oh, she's fine, Trent. Always fine, Tamika would reply dismissively. I sent her some money from the account for that little plumbing thing she had. He felt a surge of gratitude. See? This is why I love you. Thank you, baby. He didn't know the plumbing thing was a lie, a cover for a small withdrawal that was a test run. He didn't know the money she was sending was a fraction of what she was taking. The first major lie was about the roof. 3 months into his deployment, Tamika called him in a manufactured panic. Trent, oh my God, there was a huge storm. A tree branch fell and put a hole in your mother's roof. It's a disaster. His heart lurched. Is she okay? Is she hurt? She's fine, she's fine. But the repair is going to be expensive. They're quoting me like thousands of dollars. We have to use the money in the joint account. Whatever it takes, Tamika, just get it fixed. Use the POA, call a contractor, spare no expense. Just make sure she's safe and the house is secure. He envisioned his mother's cozy bungalow, the one his father had painted a cheerful yellow before he died, now damaged and exposed. The thought tore at him. He was a logistics sergeant. His job was to prevent this exact kind of failure. I'm on it, baby. I'll handle everything, she'd said, her voice dripping with counterfeit competence. He later learned there was no storm. There was no tree branch. The only disaster was the one she was engineering. The roof repair was a $15,000 withdrawal she and Lachey had split. He saw the transaction on his online statement labeled Lillian Williams, Home Maintenance, and felt relief. He had no idea the money had been immediately transferred to Lachey's account and then used as a down payment on her sister's new obsession, a $2,400 Burberry trench coat and a trip to Miami. The cruelty escalated. When Trent tried to call his mother directly, the calls often went unanswered. When he finally got through, Lillian sounded tired, her voice thin. "I'm all right, son, just resting." When he asked about Tamika, she would be hesitant. "Oh, she's a busy girl. Hasn't been by in a while." He would call Tamika, a knot of anger tightening in his chest. "I thought you were checking on Mama." "I am, Trent. God, you don't have to check up on me," she'd snap, her voice sharp and defensive. "I drove by yesterday. She was fine. Her car was in the drive. I have a life too, you know. I can't just sit by her side every minute of the day. Lachey says I'm being a doormat." The mention of Lachey was like a splash of gasoline on a spark. He hated how her sister's opinions always seemed to carry more weight than his own needs or his mother's well-being. The most outrageous lie came 6 months in. Lillian had a genuine medical issue, a bad fall that sprained her wrist. She called Trent, not wanting to bother the ever-absent Tamika. He was furious and worried. He immediately called Tamika. "Mama fell. She sprained her wrist. Did you take her to the doctor? Did you get her medicine?" There was a pause. He could hear her thinking. "Yes, of course I did, Trent. I was there in a flash. I took her to the emergency room, waited with her for 3 hours, got her prescription filled. Cost a fortune, by the way. The copay was like $300. He was flooded with a confusing mix of anger and relief. Okay, good. Thank you." But his mother's story was different. "No, baby. That nice boy from next door, the Henderson's grandson, he took me. Tamika never called me back." The lie was so bald-faced, so easily disproven, that Trent couldn't wrap his head around it. He confronted Tamika in their next call. Her reaction wasn't shame, it was fury. "Are you calling me a liar? Are you taking your mother's side against me? She's old, Trent. She forgets things. I was there. I can't believe you'd question me. After everything I'm doing for you, for your family while you're off playing soldier." The words were a calculated strike designed to make him feel guilty, to put him back in his box. It worked. He apologized, confused and heartsick. He convinced himself his mother was mistaken, that the stress of the fall had muddled her memory. He chose to believe the beautiful, cruel lie over the simple, painful truth. It was a choice he would regret more than any other. Each of these conversations, these escalating betrayals, was a shovelful of dirt being tossed onto the grave of their marriage. And he was too far away to even see the hole being dug. He couldn't imagine the final, unthinkable act she was planning. He couldn't conceive that she wasn't just neglecting his mother, she was plotting to erase her. The C-17 landed with a familiar, bone-jarring thud at 6:12 a.m. on a cool Saturday morning in Fayetteville. For Trent, the air itself felt different, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a world away from the dust that had been his constant companion for 9 months. He moved through the processing line on autopilot, his mind already home. He'd told Tamika his flight was scheduled for Sunday to give himself a surprise 24 hours, a day to see his mother, get his bearings, and just breathe before the welcome home party and the resumption of his life. His duffel bag, weighing a solid 75 pounds, felt light on his shoulder. He bypassed the official shuttle, opting for a $45 taxi ride. He gave the driver his mother's address in Massey Hill first. The need to see her, to confirm her safety with his own eyes, was a physical ache in his chest. As the cab turned onto her street, a quiet lane of modest post-war bungalows, a sense of peace began to settle over him. There were the familiar oak trees, the neatly kept lawns, the feeling of a neighborhood that had stood the test of time. The taxi pulled up to her block at 6:47 a.m. The sun was just beginning to burn the morning mist off the ground. He paid the driver and got out, his boots making a soft crunch on the asphalt. He looked toward her house, number 1422, the small yellow bungalow with the white trim. And then he stopped. His blood went cold. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The house was there, but it wasn't his mother's house anymore. A brand new, gleaming black Ford F-150, a truck that cost at least $60,000, was parked in the driveway where her old car should be. A small decorative flag with the letter B hung from a hook by the front door. The rose bushes his mother had spent years cultivating, the ones that were her pride and joy, were gone, replaced by generic, mulch-filled flower beds. A for sale sign stood on the lawn, but the sold sticker was slapped across it. Panic, cold, and sharp seized him. He fumbled for his phone to call her, his fingers thick and clumsy. No answer. He called again, voicemail. He looked around wildly, his logistical mind trying to process data that made no sense. Maybe she'd moved in with a friend. Maybe she was on a trip. Maybe Tamika had moved her to a nicer place, a condo, as a surprise. The explanations flickered and died. They didn't feel right. His eyes scanned the street, searching for a clue, and then he saw it. Parked across the street and 2 houses down, tucked under the shade of a large magnolia tree, was his mother's car, a faded blue 2008 Buick LaCrosse, a car with 187,000 miles on it, a dent in the rear bumper from a long-ago fender bender, and a value of maybe $2,500. But it was her car. Relief warred with confusion. Why would she park so far from her own house? He walked toward it, his duffel bag suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The morning was quiet except for the sound of a distant bird and the pounding of his own heart. As he got closer, he saw that the windows were fogged up from the inside. A sunshade, the kind you buy at Walmart for $12.99, was propped against the windshield, but it had slipped, leaving a gap. He peered through the gap into the hazy interior of the car. And the world stopped. His mother, Lillian Williams, a proud 68-year-old black woman who had raised a soldier, buried a husband, and maintained her dignity through every hardship, was asleep in the driver's seat. She was slumped against the door, her head cushioned by a rolled-up sweater. Her silver locks, usually so meticulously maintained, were slightly disheveled. A thin blanket was pulled up to her chin. Her chest rose and fell in the slow rhythm of sleep. On the passenger seat, he could see a small pile of her belongings: a Bible, a bag of toiletries, a framed photo of him in his dress uniform. He felt nothing. For a full 30 seconds, his mind went completely, blessedly blank. It was a system overload. The input, his mother, sleeping in her car, across the street from the house she no longer owned, was so catastrophic that his brain simply refused to process it. The shock was a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. Then the blankness shattered, and a feeling he had never known before rushed in. It wasn't just anger. It was a cold, pure, diamond-hard rage that settled deep in his bones. It was the absolute certainty of betrayal. He looked from the sold sign on his mother's lawn to the fogged-up window of her car, and he knew. He didn't know how, but he knew. Tamika. He walked to the driver's side door, his movements stiff, robotic. He raised his hand and gently, so gently, tapped on the glass. Lillian's eyes fluttered open. For a moment she was disoriented, looking at him through the glass with a stranger's confusion. Then her eyes widened. Recognition dawned, followed by a wave of shame so profound it was visible on her face. She fumbled with the lock, her hands trembling, and pushed the door open. "Trent," she breathed, her voice raspy with sleep and sorrow. "Oh, my baby, you weren't supposed to see this." Tears welled in her eyes, tears of humiliation, not joy. He didn't say, "What happened?" He didn't ask, "Why are you here?" He knelt on the damp asphalt, ignoring the strain on his knees, and wrapped his arms around his mother. He held her as she began to sob, her small frame shaking against his. He pressed his face into her hair, smelling the familiar scent of her coconut oil shampoo beneath the stale air of the car. He looked over her shoulder, his eyes fixed on the sold house. The rage was gone, replaced by a chilling, absolute calm. The logistics sergeant in him took over. This was a problem, a situation, and he was going to fix it. He had a new mission. "She said I was a burden," Lillian said, her voice barely a whisper. They were sitting in a booth at the Waffle House on Bragg Boulevard, the only place Trent could think of that was open and anonymous at 7:30 in the morning. He had ordered her the All-Star Special for $8.99 and a coffee, black. He had a glass of water. He couldn't eat. He needed to be sharp. He had insisted they leave the neighborhood immediately. He put her in the passenger seat of her own Buick, tossed his duffel in the back, and drove. He didn't want the new owners of his mother's house to see them. He didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of witnessing their pain. Now, under the fluorescent lights, with the smell of bacon and bleach in the air, the story came out in broken pieces. "It started about 4 months ago," Lillian began, staring into her coffee cup. "Tamika came over. She was with her sister, Lachey. They had papers." She looked at him, her eyes pleading for him to understand. "She said you wanted me to move into a nice apartment, a senior community. She said the house was too much for me to keep up, that you were worried sick about me being here all alone." Trent kept his face a perfect mask of calm, but inside, a volcano was erupting. He remembered a call. Tamika had mentioned, "Thinking about options for your mom's future." He had thought she meant getting her a weekly cleaning service. "She said she had your authority, Trent, your power of attorney," Lillian continued. "She said you two had decided this together, that it was for my own good. She said the market was hot and we had to act fast." Her hand, the one with the still tender wrist, trembled as she reached for her fork. She was so convincing. She talked about a beautiful place over in Westover, a condo with a pool and a clubhouse. "The place Lachey lives," Trent said. It wasn't a question. Lillian nodded. "They showed me pictures. It looked nice. But I told her, this is my home. Your father and I built our life here." She got cold then. A tear escaped and traced a path down her weathered, deep brown cheek. "She said I was being selfish. She said the house was an asset, just sitting there. She said, 'Mama Lillian, that house could clear $250,000 easy. Trent needs that money to build a future with me. You're holding him back.'" The words hit Trent like a physical punch. "You're holding him back." He could hear Tamika's voice, her smooth, persuasive tone, weaponized against his own mother. He could picture Lachey standing beside her, nodding, her eyes alight with dollar signs. "I didn't know what to do," Lillian whispered. "She had your signature. She said if I fought it, it would look bad, that it would cause trouble for you in the army. She said she was just following your orders." This was the core of the betrayal, not just the theft of money, but the theft of his word, of his honor. Tamika had used his name and his uniform as a weapon against the person he had sworn to protect. "A realtor came the next day," Lillian said, pushing her scrambled eggs around her plate. They started showing the house. Tamika told me to go stay at a motel, that it would be easier. She gave me a few $100s, said it was from you. The lie was so layered, so diabolical. The house sold in a week. They had me sign some papers at a lawyer's office. It was all so fast. Tamika said the money from the sale, my money, had to go into a special account to cool off before they could buy my new condo. She said it was a legal thing. She had me sign something that put the money in Lachey's name for safekeeping. Trent finally spoke, his voice low and steady. And the condo? Lillian shook her head, a fresh wave of tears falling. The closing was 2 months ago. Tamika kept making excuses. The condo wasn't ready. The paperwork was delayed. Then she and Lachey stopped answering my calls. The motel money ran out. I called her one last time, from a payphone. She said I was harassing her. She told me the deal was done and that I needed to move on. She said you would understand, that you would want her to be happy. She looked down at her hands. I've been in the car for 3 weeks, Trent. I just park near the old house at night. It feels safer. He reached across the table and took her hand. His own was steady as a rock. Mama, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. You were lied to. This is not your fault. His mind was a whirlwind of legal terms, military regulations, and a cold, hard fury. Limited POA, necessary care, fraud, POA abuse. He made a decision. He would not confront Tamika, not yet. Confrontation was emotional and messy. He needed evidence. He needed a plan. He was a logistics man. This was now a logistical problem. The objective, restore his mother. The obstacles, his wife and her sister. He squeezed his mother's hand. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to finish this breakfast. Then I'm getting you a room at the nicest hotel in Fayetteville. A real one, with a big bed and a hot shower. I'm going to handle this, all of it. He had to play dumb. He had to pretend he had just landed, that he was on his way home to his loving wife. He pulled out his phone and sent Tamika a text. Just landed, baby. Surprise. On my way home now. Can't wait to see you. Love you. The reply came back in seconds. OMG, you're early. That's amazing. I'm so excited. Hurry home, hero. I've missed you so much. Followed by a string of heart emojis. He looked at the text, then at his mother's tear-streaked face. The contrast was sickening. He felt a profound and chilling emptiness. The woman he had married was a stranger, a monster hiding behind heart emojis, and a $1,200 smile. He took his mother to the Embassy Suites on Lake Valley Drive, paying $289 for a suite for 2 nights on his personal credit card. He made sure she had everything she needed, then hugged her tight at the door. Get some rest, Mama. Don't talk to anyone. I'll be back tonight, I promise. As he walked back to her Buick in the hotel parking lot, he made the second call. It was to Tamika. He put the phone to his ear, composing his face, modulating his voice into one of happy anticipation. Hey, baby, he said, forcing a joyful crack into his tone. Trent, oh my God, I'm literally shaking. I can't believe you're here. Her voice was high-pitched, a performance of wifely devotion. Where are you? Just grabbed a cab. Should be there in 20 minutes, he lied smoothly. Can't wait to see you. I'm dreaming of a home-cooked meal. Oh, honey, the fridge is a little bare. I wasn't expecting you. How about I take you out? My treat. We can go to Luigi's, that nice Italian place you like. Of course you can't cook, he thought. You've been busy spending my mother's life savings. Sounds perfect, he said. See you soon. He hung up the phone and sat in the driver's seat of his mother's car for a full minute, the faint scent of her life clinging to the upholstery. He looked at his own reflection in the rearview mirror. The soldier was gone. In his place was a man with a singular, ice-cold purpose. The game had begun. Trent pulled up to their townhome complex at 9:15 a.m. He parked his mother's $2,500 Buick in a visitor spot, a stark contrast to the late-model sedans and SUVs in the reserved spaces. He walked to their front door, took a deep breath, and used his key. The moment he stepped inside, the lies hit him like a physical force. The air was thick with the scent of a new, expensive candle, something floral and cloying, a $60 diptyque candle she'd probably bought at Nordstrom. New artwork adorned the walls, abstract prints in gold frames that he knew cost at least $200 apiece. A new pair of women's shoes, Christian Louboutin heels with their signature red soles, sat by the door. A quick mental calculation told him they were worth $800, or roughly 2 weeks of his take-home pay. Tamika came running down the stairs, a vision of calculated joy. She was wearing a silk robe that looked expensive, and her hair and makeup were perfect, even at this early hour. She threw her arms around him, her performance flawless. "Baby, you're here. You're really here." He hugged her back, his body stiff. He felt like he was holding a stranger. "I'm here," he said, his voice flat. He let her pull him into the living room, onto the $200 sectional. She clung to him, peppering his face with kisses, but her eyes kept darting around, a flicker of something he now recognized as panic. "So tell me everything. How was the flight? Are you exhausted? You look amazing. A little thinner, maybe." She chattered on, filling the space with noise, preventing him from asking the questions that were burning a hole in his soul. He played his part. "Flight was long. I'm just happy to be home. Happy to see you." He looked around the room. "Place looks different." "Oh, you know," she said with a casual wave of her hand. "Just freshen things up a bit. A woman gets bored when her man is away." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "So, what do you want to do first? After we go to Luigi's, of course." "Actually," he said, keeping his tone light, "I was thinking I'd swing by and see Mama first. Surprise her." The mask slipped, just for a second. A flash of pure terror crossed her face before she smoothed it over with a concerned frown. "Oh, honey, about that. We need to talk about your mother." He leaned forward, feigning worry. "What is it? Is she okay?" "She's fine. She's fine," Tamika said quickly, patting his knee. "It's just, she's not at the house. We moved her." "Moved her? Moved her where?" This is where the big lie would be told. He braced himself. "To a wonderful new senior living facility. It's called the Willows. It's beautiful, Trent. It has a pool, activities. I used the POA, just like we discussed, to sell her house and get her set up. The market was so hot, we got an incredible price. I have all the money for her in a trust account. You'd be so proud of me." She beamed at him, a picture of wifely competence and care. Every word was a lie, built on another lie. But he had to pretend to believe her. He had to see how deep the deception went. "Wow," he said, letting a look of surprise and admiration cross his face. "You sold the house and moved her all by yourself?" "Well, Lachey helped with the paperwork. You know how she is with numbers. But yeah, I handled it. For us." She emphasized the last word, her eyes gleaming. I don't know what to say, Tamika. That's a huge weight off my mind. I've been so worried about her being alone in that old house." He was laying it on thick, and she was drinking it in, her relief palpable. She thought she'd gotten away with it. "I knew you'd be happy," she said, snuggling closer. "I did it for you, for our future. Now all that equity isn't just sitting there. It's working for us." He had to get out. The air in the townhome was suffocating him. "You know what?" he said, standing up. "I think I'm going to take a shower, wash off 9 months of dust." "Good idea," she said, her smile genuine now. "I'll go make a reservation for dinner. 7 p.m. at Luigi's. We have so much to celebrate." He went upstairs, turned the shower on as hot as it would go, and stood in the steam, his fists clenched. He didn't wash. He just stood there, letting the noise of the water drown out the sound of his world falling apart. He looked at his reflection in the steamed-up mirror. He saw the face of a man who had been played for a fool, but under that, he saw the cold, determined face of Sergeant Trent Williams. The mission was clear. The enemy was in the next room, and the battle had just begun. He had the location of the enemy's assets, the Willows, a lie, a trust account, a lie. He had the names of the co-conspirators. He had the motive. Now he just needed the evidence trail. The rest of his Saturday would be spent on reconnaissance. The first step was to confirm the lies. After his shower, Trent told Tamika he was going for a drive. "Just want to get reacquainted with Fayetteville," he said, grabbing the keys to her car, a leased Acura MDX that cost $650 a month. "I'll leave Mama's Buick here for now." He needed to move like a civilian, not like the son of the woman whose car was a rolling homeless shelter. "Okay, baby, don't be too long. Our reservation is at 7, she called after him, blowing a kiss from the doorway. His first stop was not a nostalgic tour of the city. It was the Cumberland County Register of Deeds. Even on a Saturday, he knew he could access the public records online from one of their public use terminals. He walked into the quiet government building, his dog tags tucked securely under his plain gray t-shirt. He sat down at a dusty computer terminal, its monitor humming, and typed in his mother's address, 1422 Sycamore Lane. The records loaded in seconds. Deed transfer, date 3 months ago. Grantor, Lillian Williams, by Tamika Williams. Power of attorney for Trent Williams. Grantee, a family he had never heard of. Sale price, $268,400. He stared at the number. $268,400? The number Tamika had casually tossed out at the Waffle House was almost exact. The proceeds from his mother's entire life, the home his father had poured his heart and soul into, reduced to a number on a screen. He printed the page, the $0.25 fee feeling like the best quarter he had ever spent. He folded the paper and put it in his back pocket. It was the first piece of hard evidence. Next, he drove to Westover. He found the luxury apartment complex where Lachey lived, the Preserve at Westover. It was a world away from Massey Hill. Gleaming new buildings, a resort-style pool with cabanas, a state-of-the-art fitness center. He saw Lachey's white BMW 3 Series parked in a reserved spot. He then drove to every senior living facility in a 5-mile radius, including a place called the Willows. He walked into each lobby, a photo of his mother on his phone, and asked the person at the front desk, "Excuse me, I'm looking for my mother, Lillian Williams. Her daughter-in-law was supposed to have moved her in recently." At every single place, the answer was the same, a polite shake of the head. "No, sir, I'm sorry. We have no resident by that name." At the Willows, a particularly kind-looking receptionist double-checked her computer system. "Williams, you said?" "No, I'm afraid not. We have no one on our waiting list by that name either." The lie was confirmed. There was no condo. There was no senior facility. There was only the money. His final stop before heading back to the hotel was an ATM. He needed to check the balance of the joint account he shared with Tamika, the account that his entire military salary had been deposited into for 9 months. He put his card in, punched in his PIN, and held his breath. The screen showed the balance, $412.17. He felt a dizzying wave of nausea. He had calculated it on the flight home. With his salary, minus the rent and utilities Tamika was supposed to be paying, there should have been over $20,000 in that account. He requested a mini statement. The slip of paper that spooled out told a story of 1,000 cuts, daily withdrawals of $200, $300, Venmo payments to Lachey J for nails, brunch, shopping, charges from high-end restaurants, boutiques, and spas, and then the big ones, a $15,000 withdrawal labeled home maintenance. And 2 months ago, a transfer of $5,000 to Lachey's account, labeled condo deposit. He now understood. They hadn't just sold his mother's house. They had bled him dry too. Every dollar he had earned while serving his country had been funneled into their lifestyle. The rage was back, but it was different now. It was focused. It was fuel. He drove to the embassy suites, his mind a steel trap of facts, dates, and dollar amounts. He found his mother in the suite's small living room, watching television. She looked more rested. The lines of stress around her eyes had softened. He sat down beside her. "Mama," he said, his voice gentle, "I need you to tell me about the lawyer's office, the one where you signed the papers." She thought for a moment. It was downtown, a small office. The lawyer was a young man, very slick. He kept saying it was a standard procedure. "Do you remember his name?" She shook her head. "No, but Tamika paid him. In cash, I think. She said it was better that way." Of course she did. Trent pulled out the printed deed transfer. He pointed to the notary stamp at the bottom. The name was clear: Marcus Thorne, attorney at law. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. He spent the next hour on his laptop, using the hotel's $14.95-day Wi-Fi. He found Marcus Thorne's law firm, a small, one-man operation specializing in real estate transactions. He found the new owners of his mother's house on Facebook, a young military family just like he had been. They had posted pictures of their two small children playing in the yard where his mother's roses used to be. They were innocent parties in this, another layer of victims. He cross-referenced the sale date with the withdrawals from his account. He built a timeline, a spreadsheet of deceit. The $15,000 for the non-existent roof repair, the $5,000 for the imaginary condo deposit, the constant draining stream of his own salary, and the big one, the $260,400. He had no proof yet where that money went, but he knew. He knew it was sitting in an account with Lachey's name on it. By 6 p.m., he had a folder on his laptop labeled Operation Homecoming. It contained a timeline, copies of bank statements, the deed transfer record, and a list of names. It was a dossier of betrayal. He looked at his watch, 6:15 p.m. Time to get ready for dinner. Time to put the mask back on. He had to sit across a table from the woman who had done this, smile, and pretend that everything was perfect. It was the hardest thing the Army had ever asked him to do, and it wasn't even an order. It was a necessity. The final piece of his plan required her to feel safe. It required her to believe she was still in control. He had to let her enjoy her victory dinner. He knew it would be her last. The drive to Luigi's was a masterclass in deception. Trent drove the Acura, and Tamika chattered beside him, her hand resting on his thigh. She talked about the neighbors, about a new show on Netflix, about her plans to redecorate the master bedroom. She was giddy with relief, convinced her web of lies had held. Trent nodded and smiled, making the appropriate responses. "That's great, baby." "Oh, really? We can talk about it." Each word was ash in his mouth. They were seated at a quiet corner table. The restaurant was dimly lit, romantic. It was the kind of place Tamika loved, a place to be seen. She ordered a $60 bottle of Chianti. "Let's celebrate," she said, raising her glass. "To your safe return and to our new beginning." He clinked his glass against hers. "To new beginnings," he repeated, his eyes holding hers. He wondered if she could see the truth in them, the cold, hard fury that lay beneath the surface. But she saw only what she wanted to see: her adoring husband, home from the war, ready to fall back into line. "So," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially after the waiter left, "I've been thinking. With the money from your mom's house, we could finally put a down payment on a place of our own. A real house, not a rental. Maybe in that new development over by the golf course. Lachey says the houses there are starting at $450,000, but they're a great investment." He took a slow sip of wine. The audacity was breathtaking. She was planning their future with his mother's stolen money. "The money is for Mama, Tamika," he said, keeping his voice even. "For her care." Of course, she said, waving a dismissive hand. "A portion of it is for her care. But let's be real, Trent. How much care does one old woman need? The facility is all-inclusive. Most of that money is just going to sit in the trust. It's our nest egg. A gift from your mother, really." A gift. He had to physically restrain himself from reacting. He gripped his water glass, the condensation cold against his skin. "What's the name of the trust again? I'd like to look over the paperwork, just for my own peace of mind." Her smile tightened. "Oh, honey, don't worry your handsome head about that. It's all very complicated. Legal stuff. That's what we pay lawyers for. It's all handled." "Which lawyer did you use?" he pressed, his tone one of idle curiosity. "Marcus Thorne," she said, the name dropping easily from her lips. "He's the best. Lachey found him." He filed the information away. She was confessing without even knowing it. He changed the subject, asking her about her days, her job at the boutique she helped out at. He listened to her talk about selling a $900 handbag to a doctor's wife, about the drama with the other salesgirls. He listened to the details of a life built on his money and his mother's suffering. It was fuel. Every word was more fuel for the fire he was building. The bill came. It was $147.50. "My treat," she said, pulling a new glossy credit card from her $800 wallet. The card was in her name, but he knew it was linked to an account he had unknowingly funded. On the drive home, she was quiet. She seemed to sense a shift in him, a distance that hadn't been there before.